At my father's retirement banquet, my mother announced, "Your older sibling ruined his credit, so you will be co-signing his new business loan tomorrow." My dad raised his glass and added, "Blood finances blood. No arguments tonight." I carefully set down my sparkling water. The condensation from the glass left a perfect dark ring on the white linen tablecloth. "Fantastic," I replied, keeping my voice entirely level. "Then he can leverage the equity in your penthouse condo, because my company is officially liquidating its assets, and you are completely cut off." The private dining room went deathly still. The ambient noise of the high-end Chicago steakhouse, the clinking of heavy silverware, the low hum of wealth, the jazz playing softly from the overhead speakers, seemed to drop away. My mother's wine glass hovered frozen near her mouth, a ruby crescent of liquid, tilting dangerously close to the rim. My dad's face flushed the exact shade of the expensive Merlot sitting on the tablecloth. And Trevor, my 39-year-old brother, who literally wore mirrored aviator sunglasses inside a dimly lit restaurant at 8 o'clock at night, scoffed and shook his head. "Bro, you cannot be serious right now." I was entirely serious. This was just the climax of the Trevor Relief Foundation. Sitting there, in the strained silence, I remembered the $45,000 I threw away saving him from that cryptocurrency mining farm that spectacularly caught fire in his garage 3 years ago. I remembered the luxury dog grooming business he abandoned after 3 months, leaving me to cover the broken commercial lease so he wouldn't be sued into oblivion. I remembered paying off his $12,000 IRS penalty in April 2021, just so he would not face federal tax evasion charges. I never asked for a dime in return. They never volunteered a simple thank you. Meanwhile, I am 35, and a single father to an 11-year-old girl named Maddie. I built a regional cold storage logistics firm from a single-use delivery truck. I worked brutal night shift. I ate cold sandwiches in desolate loading docks at 3 in the morning while my friends were sleeping. I sacrificed my 20s to build a permanent safety net for my daughter. My parents and my brother witnessed all that sacrifice and felt absolutely entitled to its reward. "Wesley, please try to look at the bigger picture," my mom pleaded, slipping effortlessly into her practice. Tearful guilt voice. "Trevor has a truly revolutionary tech concept this time. We are a family unit. We lift each other up." I wiped my mouth with a linen napkin. "When exactly was the last time either of you lifted me up?" My dad slammed his palm on the table. The silverware rattled. "We let you live in our finished basement for 3 months when you were 22. That is called foundational support. You mean the basement where you charged me double the market rent and made me pay for my own groceries?" The room fell quiet again. Trevor leaned forward, flashing his perfectly veneered teeth. "The ones I paid for. Dude, it is literally just a signature. I have the commercial office space locked down in the financial district. I just need your pristine corporate credit score to back a measly $250,000 note. It is guaranteed to triple in value by December." That was the exact moment I decided to burn it all down. I reached into my blazer pocket, pulled out a thick manila envelope, and tossed it right onto his plate of filet mignon. It landed with a heavy, satisfying thud, soaking up the peppercorn sauce. "You mean the financial district lease you already fraudulently signed yesterday morning?" Trevor's smug smile vanished. My mother gasped. I looked directly at my brother. "The leasing director for that property is a guy named Alan. We served in the military together. He called me on Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. because you tried to use my company's AIN number to secure the paperwork without my presence. You forged my signature on federal documents, Trevor." My dad tried to intervene, his voice wavering between authority and panic. He was just being proactive. "Wesley, you have millions sitting in accounts. Stop being so incredibly selfish. You are going to ruin your brother's future over a minor clerical error." I stood up from the table. I smoothed the front of my jacket. "I am not ruining anything. The state investigators are. I filed a comprehensive police report for commercial identity theft and corporate fraud this morning at exactly 8:30 a.m. Chaos erupted. My mom started hyperventilating, aggressively grabbing her pearl necklace as if it was choking her. Trevor knocked over his chair, backing away from the table like I had pulled a weapon on him. His aviators slipped down his nose. My dad pointed a trembling finger at my chest, screaming that he would absolutely disown me for turning against my own flesh and blood. "You cannot disown someone who already walked away," I said. I tossed a $100 bill on the table for the waiter. "If Trevor needs a defense attorney, he can ask the people who actually think he is a misunderstood genius." I walked out of the restaurant and never looked back. The night air in Chicago felt impossibly clean. I drove straight to the community center to pick up Maddie from her gymnastics meet. I walked into the gymnasium just as they were handing out the awards. She saw me from across the mat and sprinted over. She ran out with a silver medal around her neck. Beaming, she asked how the boring grown-up dinner went. I smiled. I crouched down to her eye level and adjusted the ribbon on her medal. "It was much shorter than expected," I told her. "Are you ready for that month-long trip to New Zealand we've been dreaming about for years?" We went home. We packed 2 giant suitcases. We boarded a red-eye flight from O'Hare to Auckland. For 14 days, my phone stayed on airplane mode. We hiked the Waitakere Ranges. We ate fish and chips out of newspaper wrapping on the beach at Piha. I watched my daughter laugh in the surf, entirely insulated from the toxic machinery of my family. I slept through the night for the first time in a decade. 2 weeks later, as we were eating breakfast overlooking the ocean on the balcony of our rental, I finally reconnected to the local Wi-Fi. My phone vibrated so hard and so continuously, it nearly vibrated off the glass patio table. There were 47 missed calls, mostly from unknown numbers, a few from my logistics manager back in Chicago, and 12 from my father. I opened my email. At the very top of the inbox was a message from my dad, sent at 3:14 am Central Time. The subject line was just my name, typed in all caps. "Wesley, you need to call me right now. The police came to the condo yesterday looking for Trevor. He isn't here. He hasn't answered his phone in 4 days. You have to drop the charges. The bank is trying to freeze our retirement accounts because Trevor used our power of attorney to back his bridge loan. They are saying we are liable for $150,000. You did this. You called the cops and triggered this audit. You need to wire us the money immediately to clear this up before we lose the condo." I read the email 3 times. The sound of the crashing waves below suddenly felt distant. The coffee in my mug went cold. Trevor hadn't just forged my name on the lease. He had leveraged our parents' entire financial existence to float his initial capital, fully expecting my corporate credit to sweep in and save him before the first payment came due. And when I pulled the pin, the whole structure collapsed directly onto Arthur and Helen. And my father's first instinct wasn't to blame the son who robbed him. It was to blame the son who refused to be robbed. "Dad," Maddie asked around a mouthful of toast. "You okay? You look like you're doing math in your head." "I'm fine, kiddo," I said, forcing a smile. "Just a work thing. Finish your breakfast. We've got the glowworm caves today." I waited until she was in the shower before I made the call. I dialed Cormac, my corporate attorney in Chicago. He answered on the second ring. "Wesley, thank God," Cormac said. He sounded tired. "I was getting ready to hire a private investigator to find you. I'm in New Zealand. What's the damage?" "It's messy," Cormac said. I could hear him shifting papers on his desk. "Your brother is in the wind. The State Financial Crimes Unit raided his office, which turned out to be a rented mail drop. Here's the real problem, Wes. Before the police report fully processed through the system, Trevor managed to access one of your dormant secondary LLCs, the one you used for the original truck fleet 6 years ago. I rubbed my temples. I closed those accounts. You closed the primary operating account," Cormac corrected. "You left the shell active for tax carry carryover. Trevor somehow had the old routing numbers. He managed to intercept a $68,000 vendor payment that was supposed to clear into your main logistics account on Friday. He diverted it, cashed it out through a crypto exchange, and vanished. My chest tightened. $68,000. That wasn't just pocket change. That was payroll for my warehouse staff. That was fuel for 20 diesel trucks. How did he intercept a vendor payment? I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper so Maddie wouldn't hear. He used the forged Dean documents to convince the vendor you had changed your receiving accounts. He impersonated you. The bank flagged it, but only after the wire cleared. Right now, your main operating account at Chase is frozen pending a full fraud investigation. They locked everything down to stop the bleeding. They froze my company account. Cormac, I have 40 employees. I have utility bills for cold storage warehouses. If the power gets cut, I lose $3 million in perishable inventory. I know, Cormac said quietly. I'm fighting the bank, but their fraud department moves like a glacier. They want you in person. You need to come back. I looked out at the Pacific Ocean. The bright blue sky suddenly felt oppressive. I had spent 15 years building a fortress to protect my daughter, and my brother had found a cracked brick near the foundation and stuffed dynamite into it. I'll book a flight for tomorrow, I said. I hung up the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, listening to the water run in the bathroom. By the time we landed at O'Hare 2 days later, the exhaustion was deep in my bones. Maddie was quiet on the ride home. She knew something was wrong. You can't hide that kind of stress from a kid, no matter how many times you tell them everything is fine. I dropped her off at my house, getting her settled with her favorite babysitter, a retired nurse named June, who lived next door. Then I drove straight to the warehouse. It was 9 p.m. The industrial park was mostly empty, save for the hum of the massive refrigeration units on the roof of my facility. I walked into my office. The air smelled like cardboard and cold concrete. My logistics manager, Holt, was sitting at my desk. He looked up when I walked in. He didn't say hello. The fuel supplier cut us off this morning, Holt said flatly. They tried to run the direct debit for the weekly diesel fill-up, and it bounced. Bank told them the account was locked due to suspected fraudulent activity. Now they want a certified check for the arrears before they'll send the trucks tomorrow. I sat down heavily in the chair opposite him. How much? $22,000. I'll write a personal check, I said. I already offered that, Holt replied. They won't take it. They said corporate accounts only, or cash. They think we're going under, Wes. The rumor is already spreading down the supply chain. I pulled out my phone. I had a text message from a number I didn't recognize. Wesley, it's Aunt Paige. Your mother is inconsolable. I cannot believe you are letting the bank take your parents home over a misunderstanding. You have enough money to fix this. Family is all we have. Call your mother immediately. I stared at the screen. A misunderstanding. My brother had stolen nearly 70 grand from my employees, forged federal documents, and skipped town. But to my family, it was a misunderstanding. I opened Facebook for the first time in months. I didn't have to search hard. My mother had posted a public status update that morning. Heartbroken. In our golden years, Arthur and I are facing the loss of our home because of the coldness of our youngest son. We raised him, sheltered him, and gave him everything. Now, in our time of need, he has turned his back on us and set the police on his own brother over a simple business dispute. Please pray for our family. If anyone knows a good real estate attorney who works pro bono, please DM me. Below it, there were 50 comments. Extended family, old neighbors, people I went to high school with. They were all sending prayers. They were all calling me a monster. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was Maddie. Dad, why is Grandma crying on the iPad? I closed my eyes. The cold air from the warehouse seeped under the office door, chilling the room. The hum of the refrigeration units felt incredibly loud. Holt, I said, keeping my eyes closed. Get the warehouse supervisors on a call. Tell them to halt all outbound shipments for tomorrow morning. Wes, if we halt outbound, we breach 4 major delivery contracts. We'll get hit with penalty clauses. I know, I said, opening my eyes. But we can't run the trucks without fuel. And I can't buy fuel until I get the bank to unlock the accounts. We triage the damage. Holt nodded slowly. He stood up. I'll make the calls. I'm sorry, man. After he left, I sat in the quiet office. The phone on my desk rang. It was the private line, the one only a few people had. I picked it up. Hello, Wes. The voice was faint, crackling with static. It was Trevor. Where are you? I asked. My voice was dangerously calm. Look, man, things got a little out of hand, Trevor said. He sounded entirely relaxed, like he was calling to reschedule a golf game. I had to move some capital around to cover my initial position. You spooked the lenders when you made that scene at the restaurant. You forced my hand. You stole $68,000 from my operating account. You forged my signature. I borrowed it, Trevor corrected, and I'll pay it back as soon as the new venture clears its first funding round. But you need to call the cops off, Wes. They froze Mom and Dad's accounts. You're killing them. I didn't freeze their accounts, Trevor. You used their house as collateral because you wouldn't sign the paper. Trevor's voice finally spiked with anger. If you had just co-signed the damn loan, none of this would be happening. You did this, Wesley. You're so obsessed with your little delivery business you couldn't help your own blood. I listened to his breathing on the other end of the line. I'm not dropping the charges, I said. And the next time you call me, you better have a lawyer on the line. You're making a mistake, Trevor said. The line went dead. I put the receiver down. I looked at the framed photo of Maddie on my desk, taken at her gymnastics tournament just hours before this nightmare started. I had built a wall to keep the world out, but the rats had been living inside the house the whole time. I opened my laptop. I had to figure out how to keep my company alive through the end of the week. I pulled up my personal banking dashboard. I kept my primary personal accounts at a local credit union, completely detached from the Chase corporate ecosystem. I had $142,000 in liquid savings there. It was my emergency fund, the money I had mentally earmarked for Maddie's college and whatever life threw at us. I never intended to mix it with the business. That was the cardinal rule of logistics. Never pierce your own corporate veil. But the veil was already shredded. I initiated a wire transfer of $25,000 directly to Holt's personal checking account. I texted him the confirmation number and told him to go to his bank the second they opened, get a certified check, and pay the fuel supplier in person. Then I looked at the calendar on my wall. Today was Thursday. Bi-weekly payroll ran next Thursday. 40 employees, from warehouse pickers to long-haul drivers. With taxes and benefits, the payroll run was just over $115,000. If Chase didn't unfreeze the main operating account in exactly 7 days, checks would bounce, my drivers would walk, the business would bleed out in less than 48 hours. I slept on the faux leather couch in my office. I didn't bother turning off the overhead fluorescent lights. At 6:15 a.m., the heavy vibration of the dock doors rolling up woke me. I walked out onto the warehouse floor. The air was frigid, 50 degrees by design, smelling of ozone and diesel exhaust. Holt was already there, wearing his heavy high-vis jacket, holding a stack of clipboard. He gave me a single, tight nod. The fuel trucks had arrived. He had the check. We were running today. I walked back to my office to make a pot of coffee. Before the water could even brew, the intercom on my desk buzzed. It was Delaney, my daytime dispatcher. Wes, I've got a box truck at Bay 4. Not one of ours. Driver says he has a freight delivery for the executive suite, but the bill of lading is weird. I rubbed my face. What kind of freight? Looks like office furniture. A lot of it. I walked down to Bay 4. A massive white delivery truck was backed up to the loading dock. A driver in a gray uniform was leaning against the pallets, chewing on a toothpick. He held out a digital tablet as I approached. You Wesley? The driver asked. Yes. Got 30 Herman Miller Aeron chairs, 3 custom oak conference tables, and 2 commercial La Marzocco espresso machines. I need a signature. I looked past him into the cavernous back of the truck. It was packed to the roof with high-end corporate furnishings. I didn't order any of this. What's the billing name? The driver tapped his screen. Billed to an LLC. Cold Chain Regional Holding. My dormant shell company. The one Trevor had hijacked. Who paid for it? I asked, my stomach tightening. Nobody. The driver said, looking confused. It's a net 30 invoice. Approved commercial credit line. The delivery address was supposed to be downtown in the financial district, but we got an automated reroute order at midnight, saying the lease fell through, and to deliver it to this industrial park instead. Trevor hadn't just stolen the $68,000 cash. He had used my company's credit rating to fully outfit his imaginary tech startup on 30-day terms. When the building manager, my old friend Alan, locked him out of the suite, Trevor panicked. Instead of canceling the order and alerting the supplier, he just rerouted the delivery to my warehouse so it wouldn't be left on the sidewalk. He dumped the physical evidence of his fraud right onto my loading dock. I'm refusing delivery, I said. Take it back. I can't take it back, the driver said, his tone hardening. This is custom freight. The warehouse in Grand Rapids already marked it out. If you refuse it, I have to dump it in the lot and charge you a restocking fee on the invoice. I don't care what you charge. The account is fraudulent. Take it off my dock. I turned around and walked away before he could argue. I could hear him swearing, slamming the roll-up door of his truck. I needed to get to the bank. I drove into the city, fighting rush hour traffic on I-90. The Chase Commercial Branch was in a sleek glass building off Wacker Drive. I had an appointment with my relationship manager, Soren. Soren had handled my accounts for 6 years. He knew my business model. He knew I was reliable. I expected to sit down, show him the police report, prove the identity theft, and get my main operating account unlocked. Soren was waiting for me in his office. He didn't offer his hand when I walked in. He looked distinctly uncomfortable. His computer screen was turned slightly away from the guest chair. Wes, Soren said quietly, closing his office door. It's bad. I sat down. Soren, I have the police report. I have my attorney's affidavit. My brother hijacked a dormant LLC. My main operating account has absolutely nothing to do with it. You need to lift the freeze so I can make payroll next week. Soren folded his hands on his desk. He looked physically pained. I can't lift the freeze. I don't even have the authorization to view your account balances anymore. It's been escalated past the regional fraud department. Escalated to who? Compliance, Soren whispered. He leaned forward. Wes, the $68,000 your brother intercepted? He didn't just cash it out. He wired it to an offshore cryptocurrency exchange. An exchange that was flagged by the Treasury Department 3 weeks ago for laundering money for Russian ransomware syndicates. I stared at him. The ambient noise of the bank lobby outside the glass walls seemed to mute. It triggered an automated federal AML protocol. Soren continued. Anti-money laundering. Because the wire originated from an LLC tied to your social security number, and because it crossed an international border into a sanctioned exchange, the bank system automatically locked every single asset tied to you. We aren't just investigating fraud, Wes. We are legally required to freeze the assets until federal regulators clear you of money laundering. Trevor forged the wire transfer, I said, my voice barely audible. I wasn't even in the country. I believe you, Soren said. But the algorithm doesn't care. It sees your tax ID, and it sees a sanctioned foreign exchange. You're locked out. And Wes, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you need to check your personal account. The credit union. The AmNet usually sweeps the whole profile. I pulled my phone out of my pocket with a shaking hand. I opened the credit union app. The little loading circle spun for 3 seconds. Account access restricted. Please call customer service. The $142,000 emergency fund. Gone. Frozen in the digital ether. I walked out of the bank in a daze. The Chicago skyline loomed over me, steel and glass reflecting the morning sun. I had 40 employees depending on me. I had hundreds of thousands of dollars of perishable food sitting in my warehouse. I had $120 in my wallet. My phone vibrated in my hand. It was an incoming call from June, Maddie's babysitter. I answered it immediately. June, is Maddie okay? She's fine, Wesley, June said, her voice strained. She's eating cereal. But you need to come home. What's wrong? Your aunt is here, June said. Paige, she's parked in your driveway. She keeps ringing the doorbell. She's yelling through the glass. She's telling Maddie to open the door because she needs to rescue her from a sociopath. A cold, heavy rage settled into my chest. It wasn't the frantic panic I felt in the bank. It was something darker. Slower. Do not open the door. June, tell Maddie to put her headphones on. I'm 10 minutes away. I didn't drive carefully. I cut through alleyways and ignored speed limits. When I turned onto my quiet tree-lined street in Oak Park, I saw my Aunt Paige's silver Lexus SUV blocking my driveway. Paige was standing on my front porch, wearing a beige cashmere cardigan, aggressively pressing the doorbell. I slammed my truck into park on the street and walked up the lawn. Paige, I said loudly. She whipped around. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide with a frantic, self-righteous energy. She marched down the porch steps toward me. She had a thick manila folder in her hand. How dare you, she hissed, pointing a manicured finger at my face. How absolutely dare you leave your mother crying on the floor of her condo. They are going to lose their home today, Wesley. The bank served them with a default notice this morning. Get off my property, I said, stepping between her and the front door. I brought the paperwork, Paige demanded, shoving the folder at my chest. Your father's attorney drew it up. It's a retraction. You sign this, you drop the police report, and you claim responsibility for the clerical error. That releases the lien on their condo. I looked at the folder. She wanted me to sign a legal confession to a federal crime I didn't commit, to take the fall for Trevor's fraud. All to save the equity in my parents' luxury penthouse. You're out of your mind, I said. Trevor stole from my company. He wired the money to a sanctioned offshore account. The federal government just froze every single dollar I own. My business is going to be dead by next week. Paige waved her hand dismissively, as if I had just complained about the weather. You have insurance for your little warehouse. Your parents have nothing but that condo. Trevor made a mistake, yes, but he is a visionary. He just needed runway. You are destroying this family out of pure jealousy. Jealousy? I laughed. A harsh scraping sound. He is 39 years old and has never held a job for more than 6 months. He is a parasite. Paige slapped me. It wasn't a hard slap. More of a frantic, stinging strike to my cheek, but the crack of it echoed down the quiet suburban street. We both froze. I didn't raise my hand. I just stared at her. You will sign the retraction, Paige said, her voice shaking. Though whether from anger or the shock of what she just did, I couldn't tell. Or, I promise you, Wesley, we will take this to family court. Your parents are already talking to a lawyer about grandparents' rights. If you are going to act like a criminal and a sociopath, we are not going to let you raise Madison. They were threatening my daughter. They had taken my money. They had taken my business. Now they were threatening the only thing in the world that mattered to me. I took a slow, deep breath. The cold rage inside me hardened into absolute concrete. Paige, I said softly, you have exactly 10 seconds to get in your car and drive away. If you are still on my pavement at 11, I am calling the police and having you arrested for trespassing and assault. You wouldn't dare. 1, I said. She stared at me. She was looking for a bluff. She saw nothing but dead eyes. 2, she backed away, clutching her folder. You are sick, Wesley. You need help. 3, she practically ran to her Lexus. She threw it in reverse, the tires squealing against the asphalt as she backed out of my driveway and sped down the street. I stood on the lawn for a long time, letting the cool morning air hit my face where her hand had struck. I turned and looked at my house. In the front window, behind the glass, I could see Maddie peeking through the blind. She looked terrified. I walked inside. June was standing in the hallway, wringing her hands. "I'm sorry, Wesley," she said. "She just showed up. It's not your fault, June. Thank you for keeping the door locked." I walked into the living room. Maddie was sitting on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest. She looked up at me. "Dad, why did Aunt Paige say you were a criminal?" I sat down next to her. I didn't want to lie. I couldn't sugarcoat this anymore. The blast radius of my family's dysfunction had reached her. Uncle Trevor did something really bad, Mads. He stole money from my business. He used Grandma and Grandpa's house to do it. And because I won't let him get away with it, they are very angry with me. Maddie frowned. She was 11, old enough to understand fairness, young enough to still expect it from adults. But if he stole it, why are they mad at you? Because in our family, it was always my job to fix Trevor's messes. And this time, I said no. She thought about that for a second. Then she rested her head against my arm. "I'm glad you said no." I kissed the top of her head. I had to protect her. I had to protect my drivers, my dispatchers, my warehouse staff. I couldn't wait for the federal government to unravel a cryptocurrency money laundering web. I couldn't wait for the bank. I needed cash, untraceable and immediate, to keep the lights on and the trucks moving. My phone buzzed again. I looked at the screen. It was Cormac. I stood up and walked into the kitchen to answer it. "Did you find a way around the ammo freeze?" I asked. "No," Cormac said. His voice was grim. "But I found Trevor." I gripped the edge of the granite counter. "Where?" "He didn't skip town. At least, not yet. I hired that private investigator yesterday. He ran the license plates on Trevor's leased Audi. He's been living out of an extended stay hotel in Skokie under a fake name. And Wes, he's not alone." "What do you mean?" "The Pi got photos of him in the parking lot this morning. He's with a woman. I ran her face through the database. Her name is Ren Devereaux." The name meant nothing to me. "Who is that?" "She's a commercial real estate broker," Cormac said. "Specifically, she handles distressed asset liquidation." "Wes, Trevor isn't just hiding. He's trying to sell the title to your logistics company." "How does he sell a company he doesn't own?" I asked, staring blankly at the kitchen tile. "On paper, he made it look like he does," Cormac explained, his voice tight with the kind of professional frustration lawyers get when the system fails perfectly. "The dormant LLC. Cold Chain Regional Holding. He filed an amended statement of information online with the Secretary of State last week. All it takes is a credit card and filling out a web form. He removed you as the registered agent and listed himself as the sole managing member. Because your actual operating company was originally structured under that holding entity before the reorganization 3 years ago, he's using the outdated corporate structure to claim authority over the physical asset. He's trying to sell my trucks and my warehouse lease. He's trying to sell the whole book of business," Cormac corrected. "Client list, current contracts, physical assets, everything. Ren Devereaux specializes in quiet, off-market liquidations for distressed company." Trevor went to her, told her the company was over-leveraged. The owner, you, had a mental breakdown and fled the country, and he was stepping in to salvage the equity before bankruptcy. He priced the whole operation at 80 cents on the dollar for a fast cash close. I pressed the heel of my hand into my forehead. A headache was starting to bloom right behind my eyes. "Can he actually close a sale if a buyer doesn't look too closely at the corporate history during due diligence?" "Yes, he has the forged state document. He has the power of attorney from your parents, which he probably used to show he has familial backing for the takeover. It's a house of cards, Wes. But if he finds a buyer willing to wire the funds into an escrow account he controls, he can take the money and vanish before the title transfer gets bounced by the state." "Give me her number." "Ren Devereaux?" "Wes, I should be the one too. Give me the number." "Cormac, if you call her, it's lawyer to lawyer. It's a negotiation. If I call her, it's the owner telling her she's currently fencing stolen property." Cormac sighed, but he rattled off a Chicago area code. I typed it into my phone. I told Cormac to file whatever emergency injunction he needed to file with the Chancery Court to lock the corporate deed, and hung up. I looked back into the living room. Maddie was watching a cartoon, the volume turned down low. June was sitting in the armchair, reading a paperback. The house felt quiet, too quiet, like the water pulling back from the beach before a tsunami hit. I walked out to the backyard patio and dialed the number. It went straight to voicemail. "This is Ren Devereaux. Leave a message." "Ren, my name is Wesley Calloway. I am the founder, owner, and sole managing member of Cold Chain Logistics. The man sitting in the Skokie hotel room with you is my brother Trevor. He forged federal documents to hijack a dormant LLC. He is currently under active investigation by the State Financial Crimes Unit, and the FBI is likely getting involved because he wired $68,000 of my money to a sanctioned Russian crypto exchange. If you facilitate the sale of a single pallet of my inventory, I will name you as a co-conspirator in the federal fraud indictment, and I will personally see to it that the state strips your broker's license. Call me back." I hung up. I didn't have time to wait for her panic to set in. I drove back to the warehouse. The fuel trucks had left, and my drivers were loading the afternoon routes. The dock was chaotic, loud, and moving. It was the only thing in my life that made sense right now. I found Holt in the dispatcher's cage. He was looking at a spreadsheet on his monitor, his jaw tight. "Fuel is in," Holt said without looking up. "But we have a new problem. Apex Freight." Apex was the largest regional competitor I had. They had been trying to buy me out for 3 years. I always told them no. Their corporate culture was garbage. They treated their drivers like disposable commodity, and I refused to subject my crew to them. "What about them?" I asked. Holt spun his monitor around. It was an email from one of our largest clients, a frozen seafood distributor out of Milwaukee. "Holt, getting weird calls from Apex reps today. They said they are absorbing Cold Chain's regional routes by the end of the month and want to transition our contract over to their billing system early to avoid service interruptions. Please advise." I felt my stomach drop. "Trevor," I muttered. "What?" Holt asked. "The buyer," I said, the pieces clicking together with sickening speed. "Trevor took the liquidation listing to Ren Devereaux, and Ren went straight to Apex because she knew they wanted us. Apex thinks they just bought us out from under me." Holt stood up. "Wes, if the clients think we're being sold, they'll start withholding payments until the transition clears. We won't see a dime of accounts receivable for 60 days. We're already running on fumes." "I know," I said. "Send a mass email to every client on the roster. Tell them Cold Chain is not for sale, there is no merger, and any communication from Apex or an entity called Cold Chain Regional Holdings is to be considered fraudulent and reported to us immediately." Holt nodded, his fingers already flying across his keyboard. "Done. What about payroll?" "That was the actual bleeding wound. I'm working on it." I walked out of the cage and down the concrete steps to the floor. A driver named Sullivan was leaning against his rig, filling out his pre-trip inspection log. Sullivan had been with me since the beginning. He was 55, a grandfather of 4, and he drove the longest, worst routes without ever complaining. He looked up as I walked by. "Hey, boss." "Morning, Sully. Trucks running smooth?" Sullivan capped his pen and put it in his breast pocket. He looked around to make sure nobody was in earshot. "Trucks are fine, but people are talking, Wes. Guys heard the fuel supplier throwing a fit this morning. Now there's rumors Apex is sniffing around our contract. I got guys asking me if they should be updating their resume." I stopped. I looked him in the eye. I couldn't lie to it. Not after everything we built. My accounts got frozen. Sully, identity theft. A family member got a hold of some old corporate routing numbers and triggered a bank audit. I am fighting it, but the money is locked behind red tape. Sullivan's face didn't change. He just absorbed the information. "Payroll is next Thursday. You'll get paid," I said. Every single one of you. On time. I don't care what I have to do to make it happen, but I need you to hold the line out here. Don't let the guys panic. You drive the routes. I'll find the money. Sullivan looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll tell the boys it's handled. Don't make me a liar, Wes. I won't. I went back to my office and shut the door. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and started doing the math. Payroll, taxes, benefits, $115,000. Rent for the facility, $32,000. Utility bills for the massive refrigeration units, $18,000. I needed $165,000 in liquid, untraceable cash in 7 days, or the business was dead. My personal accounts were frozen. My corporate accounts were frozen. The bank wouldn't issue a line of credit against a frozen profile. I looked out the window of my office. It overlooked the back lot of the industrial park. Sitting at the far edge of the asphalt, behind a chain-link fence, were 4 massive Caterpillar industrial diesel generators. I bought them 2 years ago for $250,000 after a freak summer storm knocked out the grid for 3 days and nearly cost me my entire inventory. They were my ultimate insurance policy. They had 0 hours on the engine. I opened a new tab on my computer and searched for commercial heavy machinery liquidators in Illinois. I found a company in Joliet that advertised same-day cash buyouts for industrial equipment. I dialed the number. A man named Frank answered. I have 4 Cat C15 diesel generator set, I told him. Brand new. Never been fired outside of testing. Enclosures and base tanks included. I need them gone today. Frank whistled. That's heavy iron. Why are you dumping them? Facility upgrade. I lied smoothly. I need the space in the yard. What are you paying? Market is flooded right now. Frank head. If they're pristine, I can give you $80,000 for the lot. Cashier's check on the spot. We bring the flatbeds. $80,000. I paid $250 for them. It was a sickening loss. It was stripping the copper wire out of my own walls to pay the mortgage. Make it $90, I said. And you have to be here before 4 o'clock. $85, Frank countered. And I'll be there at 3. Done. I hung up. I wrote $85,000 on the legal pad. It wasn't enough. I still needed $80,000 more just to cover the bare minimum survival numbers for the week. My phone buzzed on the desk. An incoming call from an unknown number. I stared at it. I assumed it was Ren Devereaux returning my threat. I picked it up. This is Wesley. Wesley, it's your father. Arthur's voice didn't sound angry. It didn't have the booming, authoritative resonance he usually commanded at dinner tables and family functions. He sounded old. He sounded hollow. I didn't say anything. I just listened to the faint sound of packing tape ripping in the background on his end of the line. Your mother is packing the good china, Arthur said, his voice breaking slightly. The bank sent an agent this morning. They changed the locks on the lobby access door. We have until Monday to vacate the premises. I squeezed my eyes shut. Dad, I know, Arthur interrupted. I know, Wesley. Trevor lied to us. We got the bank records from the fraud investigator 2 hours ago. He didn't use the loan for the tech startup. He used the equity in our condo to pay off his crypto debts, and then he wired the rest of the money offshore. The investigator told us the same thing they probably told you. The money is gone. Trevor is gone. He's not gone, I said coldly. He's in Skokie trying to sell my company to a competitor. Arthur let out a long, ragged exhale. He's sick, Wesley. He has a sickness in his mind, but he's still your brother. No, he isn't. He's a liability. Wesley, please, my father begged. Actually, begged. The man who had charged me rent to sleep on a concrete floor when I was 22, who had demanded absolute respect his entire life, was crying into the phone. If you don't call the bank and take responsibility for the corporate signature, they are going to take the house. We have nowhere to go. We'll be homeless. Wesley, we are in our 70s. I am not taking a federal fraud charge for him, Dad. If I claim that signature, I go to prison. Do you understand that? You are asking me to leave Maddie without a father so you can keep a penthouse. You wouldn't go to prison. Arthur insisted, clinging to his delusion. You have expensive lawyers. You pay a fine. You have millions in the business. You can absorb this. We can't. I looked down at the legal pad. The $85,000 I was about to cannibalize from my own safety net, just to survive the week. I don't have millions, Dad. The federal government froze everything I own because of what your sick son did. I am currently selling my backup generators to a scrap dealer, just so I can pay my drivers on Thursday. The line went dead quiet. Even the sound of the packing tape stopped. You're lying, Arthur whispered. You're just trying to punish us. I have to go, Dad. I have a business to save. I hung up the phone. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt exhausted. At 2:45 p.m., my cell phone rang again. It was Ren Devereaux. Mr. Calloway, she said. Her professional veneer was entirely gone. She sounded frantic. I pulled the IP logs on the DocuSign. I ran the notary seal through the state database. The notary doesn't exist. I told you. I halted the listing, Ren said quickly. I pulled the prospectus from the private exchange. But there's a problem. A major problem. I sat forward in my chair. Apex Freight. Yes, Apex. I sent them the letter of intent this morning. Trevor signed it at 11 a.m. Apex countersigned at noon. They wired a $200,000 good faith deposit into the escrow account to lock the exclusivity period. Escrow account, I asked, a cold sweat breaking out on the back of my neck. Which escrow account? The one Trevor provided on the closing documents, Ren said. An account registered to Cold Chain Regional Holding. He didn't need to sell the whole company. He never intended to close the deal. The whole liquidation was a bait and switch, just to get the competitor to wire a massive, non-refundable deposit into the shell company. Where is Trevor now? I asked. He left the hotel 30 minutes ago, Ren said, her voice shaking. He said he was going to the bank to verify the wire transfer. Which bank? I asked, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles ached. Ren said. The commercial branch in Skokie. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half cough. I didn't even say goodbye to Ren. I hung up and dialed Soren's direct line. He picked up on the first ring, probably because he saw my caller ID and thought I was calling to yell at him about my frozen checking account. Wes, I told you I can't, Soren. Shut up and listen. Open the profile for Cold Chain Regional Holdings, the dormant LLC, right now. I could hear him typing. Wes, I'm not supposed to access. Look at the incoming wire queue. I snapped. You're the relationship manager for my whole profile. Look at it. A few seconds of silence. Then, a sharp intake of breath. There's a $200,000 inbound wire from Apex Logistics hitting the escrow sub-account. Wes, what is this? My brother is walking into the Skokie branch right now to try and withdraw it, or move it, or whatever the hell he thinks he can do. But that LLC is tied to my primary tax ID, isn't it? Yeah, Soren said slowly. And my primary tax ID is under an active federal AML-free because of the crypto transfer. Yeah, so what happens when a sanctioned profile receives a $200,000 deposit? I could hear the realization dawn on Soren. The system swallows it. It automatically seizes the incoming funds and adds them to the locked asset pool pending the federal audit. The branch teller won't even be able to see the balance. It'll just throw a code 4 compliance error on their screen. Put a note in the system, I said. Tell the Skokie branch manager that the man standing at the counter using my corporate AIN is not Wesley Calloway, and he is currently under investigation for identity theft. I'm flagging it right now, Soren said, his voice dropping to a rapid, professional whisper. Wes, if he tries to present forged documents to a teller while there's an active code 4, they'll stall him and call the police. I finished. Thanks, Soren. I hung up. I sat at my desk and stared at the wall. I pictured Trevor standing in that air-conditioned bank lobby, wearing his stupid aviators, drumming his fingers on the marble counter, waiting for a cashier's check that was never going to come. I pictured the teller looking at her screen, seeing the red compliance flag, and quietly picking up the phone to call the back office. But the satisfaction only lasted about 3 minutes. My office door swung open. Holt walked in. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked exhausted. We have a situation. What now? There's a guy in the lobby. Older guy. Expensive suit. He drove a black Mercedes right up to the front doors and parked in the fire lane. Says his name is Whitmore. He's the CEO of Apex Freight. My stomach tied itself into a cold, hard knot. Trevor didn't just steal from me anymore. He stole from a massive corporate entity with an army of lawyers. Send him in, I said. A minute later, Whitmore stepped into my office. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair and eyes like chipped flint. He didn't offer his hand. He looked around my modest, windowless office with unconcealed disgust, then looked at me. You play a very dangerous game, Mr. Calloway, Whitmore said. His voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes from a lifetime of giving orders that get obeyed. Have a seat, Mr. Whitmore. He didn't sit. I don't need a seat. I need my $200,000 back. And I need a very good explanation as to why my attorneys just informed me that the company I signed a letter of intent to purchase this morning is claiming the sale is fraudulent. Because it is fraudulent, I said, keeping my voice level. I own Cold Chain. I have never listed it for sale. The man you signed the law with is my brother, who is currently committing corporate identity theft. The state police are looking for him. Whitmore stared at me. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his inner suit pocket and tossed it onto my desk. I unfolded it. It was a printout of the state registry for Cold Chain Regional Holdings, showing Trevor as the sole managing member. This is a public, state-certified document. Wesley, it says he owns the asset. It's a dormant shell company, I explained, though I knew how thin it sounded to a man who just lost $250,000. He forged an amendment form online. He doesn't own my truck. He doesn't hold my warehouse leases. I don't care about your family drama, Whitmore said flatly. I wired $200,000 in good faith to your corporate entity. Apex wants this region, and we were willing to absorb your operation quietly. If you are trying to back out of the deal and keep the escrow as a penalty fee, I will bury you. I will file an emergency injunction tomorrow morning to ground every single truck in your fleet until my money is returned. I don't have your money, I said. The federal government has it. Whitmore narrowed his eyes. Excuse me? The account you wired the money into is locked under an anti-money laundering freeze. The bank swallowed the wire the second it hit. Even if I wanted to refund you, I couldn't. Whitmore's face went rigid. You let me wire funds into a federally sanctioned account? I didn't let you do anything. I didn't know you were buying my company until an hour ago. He leaned over my desk, planting his knuckles on the wood. I don't give a damn about your excuses. You have until Monday at 9 a.m. to return my deposit. If the money isn't in my account, I am dragging you into civil court, and I will personally ensure your logistics licenses are revoked pending a fraud investigation. He turned and walked out of the office. He didn't shut the door behind him. I rubbed my temples. The headache was fully formed now, a pulsing drumbeat behind my eyes. I had to pay my drivers by Thursday. I had to pay Whitmore by Monday, and I still had to figure out how to keep my parents from ending up on the street, even if they deserved it. I checked my watch. 3:15 p.m. I walked out to the loading dock. Frank, the heavy machinery liquidator from Joliet, had just pulled up in a massive flatbed truck. He was standing by the chain link fence, inspecting my 4 Caterpillar generators with a clipboard in his hand. I walked over to him. The afternoon sun was hot, baking the smell of diesel into the asphalt. They're clean, Frank said, slapping the side of the nearest generator enclosure. Like you said, 0 hours. But the market's soft wet. I brought the cashier's check for $85, but honestly, looking at the transport cost, I'm taking a risk. He handed me the check. I looked at it. $85,000. It felt like holding a severed limb. It was my safety net, gone in an instant to buy me 5 days of breathing room. Load them up, I said, putting the check in my pocket. Before his crew could even get the forklift off the flatbed, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I let it ring twice, dreading who else Trevor had dragged into this mess. Wesley Calloway, I answered. Is this Wesley? A woman's voice asked. She sounded young, professional, but slightly out of breath. This is Officer Roslin with the Skokie Police Department. I turned away from the noise of the flatbed. Yeah, what happened? We received a call from the Chase Bank branch manager on Dempster Street regarding a Code 4 compliance violation and suspected identity theft. A man attempting to access a frozen commercial account. Trevor Calloway, I said. My brother. Well, that's the complication, sir, Officer Roslin said, her tone shifting slightly. The suspect did present a driver's license with the name Trevor Calloway, but when the teller informed him the account was locked and asked him to wait for the manager, he became highly agitated. He abandoned the documents on the counter and fled the premises before our patrol car arrived. He ran. He left the bank, but he didn't run far. Roslin paused. He got into a vehicle in the parking lot. A silver Lexus SUV. It was registered to a Paige Dren. Aunt Paige. She hadn't just come to my house to yell at me. She was the getaway driver. My family was actively aiding and abetting a federal fugitive because they were so thoroughly convinced I was the villain. They're gone? I asked. Yes, sir. We are putting out a bolo for the vehicle, but given the nature of the white-collar charges, we don't have the authorization for a hard pursuit. I'm calling because the bank manager gave us your contact information as the primary registered agent for the flagged LLC. We need you to come down to the station to formally identify the forged document. I'll be there in an hour, I said. I hung up the phone. I watched Frank's crew lift the first generator onto the flatbed. The heavy iron swung slightly in the air, a physical manifestation of my hard work being hauled away for scrap price. My phone buzzed again. A text message this time. It was from Aunt Paige. You really called the police on him at the bank. You are a monster, Wesley. We are taking matters into our own hands now. I stared at the text. Taking matters into their own hands. What the hell did that mean? They had no money, no leverage, and the bank was foreclosing on Arthur and Helen's condo on Monday. What else could they possibly take from me? Then it hit me. A cold, absolute terror that completely bypassed the headache and settled directly into my bones. I opened my banking app, the credit union where I kept my personal account, the one that was locked by the AML freeze this morning. I hadn't checked it since I left the commercial bank. I just assumed it was still frozen dead. I typed in my credentials. The loading circle spun. This time, it didn't give me an access restricted error. It let me in. The AML freeze was a localized Chase protocol based on the SWIFT network flag. It hadn't fully propagated to the regional credit union yet. The freeze there had been a temporary security lock due to suspicious login attempt from Trevor trying to hack it. But the account wasn't frozen anymore. It was open, and the balance was $12.40. The $142,000 emergency fund was gone. I tapped frantically on the transaction history. There it was. An outbound wire transfer executed at 1:45 p.m. Not a crypto exchange, not an offshore account. A domestic wire transfer to a joint checking account held by Arthur and Helen Calloway. Trevor hadn't hacked the credit union. He didn't need to. He had Arthur and Helen's power of attorney, and he had my social security number. He had convinced my parents to walk into their local branch, present the power of attorney along with a falsified hardship letter, claiming I was medically incapacitated, and legally authorized a family transfer to save their condo. They stole my daughter's college fund to pay off the bank, fully believing they were just taking back what they deserved from their ungrateful son. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't scream. I just stared at the screen until the backlight timed out and the glass went black, reflecting my own exhausted face back at me. They crossed the final line. It wasn't about Trevor's incompetence anymore. It was about Arthur and Helen's entitlement. They looked at Maddie's future, weighed it against the embarrassment of losing their luxury penthouse, and decided my daughter was the acceptable casualty. I turned the screen back on and called the credit union's primary fraud hotline. I bypassed the automated system, mashing the 0 key until a human being picked up. "My name is Wesley Calloway," I said, my voice eerily calm. "An hour ago, a wire transfer for $142,000 was executed out of my account using a power of attorney. I am the account holder. I am of sound mind. I am not medically incapacitated, and the hardship letter presented to your branch was forged. I am reporting a fraudulent wire transfer and the elder abuse of a minor's trust." The representative stammered, putting me on a brief hold. When he came back, a senior fraud investigator was on the line. "Mr. Calloway, we see the transfer. It was routed to a joint checking account at Wells Fargo. Because it's a domestic wire of that size, it sits in a clearing queue until 4 p.m. I looked at the clock on my wall. It was 3:42 p.m. "Stop it," I said. "Cancel the wire. Flag the POA as fraudulent." "Done," the investigator said. I could hear the aggressive clacking of his keyboard. "The funds will be returned to your account within the hour, but we will have to lock the profile down for a full security review." "Lock it," I said. "Just don't let them have the money." I hung up. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The air in my office finally felt like oxygen again. I grabbed my keys and drove directly to the Skokie Police Department. Officer Roslyn was waiting for me at the front desk. She escorted me back to a small, windowless interview room where a white-collar crimes detective named Barrows was sitting behind a metal table. I didn't hold anything back. I gave them the forged DocuSign lead. I laid out the amended LLC filing, the offshore crypto transfer, the Apex Freight escrow account, and the climax of it all, the forged hardship letter my parents used to try and drain my personal savings. Detective Barrows looked through the printed stack of evidence. He tapped his pen against the metal table. "You understand that if you sign this affidavit, we aren't just going after your brother. Your parents presented falsified legal documents to a federally insured financial institution. They executed the wire." "I understand," I said. "They're looking at felony bank fraud, Mr. Calloway. Given their age, that's a heavy charge. They tried to steal my 11-year-old daughter's college fund so they wouldn't have to downsize their condo," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Arrest them." I signed the paperwork. I formally abandoned the Cold Chain Regional Holdings shell company, explicitly stating in a sworn affidavit that the entity had been hijacked and the escrow funds held within it were stolen from Apex Freight. When I walked out of the police station, the sun was starting to set over the Chicago suburbs. I sat in my truck and made one more call. Whitmore's assistant answered, but I bullied my way through until the CEO got on the line. "You have a lot of nerve calling me," Whitmore said. "I have your money," I replied. "Or rather, I know how you can get it back without filing an injunction that will destroy my company." He didn't hang up. He listened. I told him I had just signed a sworn police affidavit relinquishing all claims to the escrow account, officially declaring the transaction fraudulent. "If you file an emergency petition with Chase tomorrow morning, citing my police report, their compliance department will release the $200,000 back to you. The AML freeze only applies to my assets." I just legally swore that money isn't mine. Whitmore was quiet for a long time. "You gave up the holding company you built just to trap your brother?" "I gave up a hollow shell company," I corrected. "My actual operating business is completely isolated from it. You get your deposit back. I keep my trucks running. We both walk away. And your brother? The state police are pulling the warrants right now." Whitmore grunted. It was the closest thing to respect I was ever going to get from him. "Send my legal team the police report number. I'll hold off on the injunction." By Wednesday morning, the dominoes finally fell. The $142,000 cleared back into my personal account. The credit union issued me a new routing number and locked out all external access. I immediately wired the funds to my primary business account, which Cormac had managed to partially unfreeze by presenting the police affidavits proving the crypto transfer wasn't mine. Thursday morning, payroll ran. Every single one of my 40 employees got their direct deposit. The trucks kept moving. The cold storage stayed cold. Sullivan gave me a salute as he pulled his rig out of the yard, and Holt finally looked like he had slept through the night. The fallout from my family was absolute. Trevor didn't make it far. He was pulled over in Aunt Paige's silver Lexus on a highway in Indiana on Friday night. He tried to tell the state troopers he was a wealthy tech CEO heading to a conference, but the warrants were already in the national database. He was extradited back to Illinois to face 6 counts of commercial fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. My parents lost the condo. Monday came, the bank didn't get their wire, and the foreclosure proceeded without hesitation. But losing the penthouse was the least of their problem. The credit union filed federal charges against Arthur and Helen for presenting the forged power of attorney. They were arrested on a Tuesday morning while packing their remaining belongings into cardboard boxes in the lobby of their building. My phone rang exactly once from the county jail. It was Arthur. I didn't answer it. I blocked the number. I didn't go to the arraignments. I didn't talk to Aunt Paige or any of the extended family who blew up my phone calling me a traitor. I changed my number, locked down my personal credit, and put a permanent security detail at the warehouse gate. 6 months later, I was sitting on the back porch of my house. The weather had finally turned warm again. The business had stabilized, actually growing stronger after shedding the dead weight of Apex's buyout attempts. Maddie came out onto the porch, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed me one and sat down on the wooden step, looking out at the yard. "Are we still going to go back to New Zealand?" she asked, taking a sip of her drink. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. "Whenever you want, Mads. We can go anywhere." I took a sip of the lemonade. It was cold, sweet, and perfect. I had spent my entire adult life trying to build a fortress to protect my family, only to realize the real threat had been living inside the walls all along. I had to burn the fortress down to get them out. Now, we were just building a home. And for the first time in my life, the foundation was solid.